majority as of now come from China and India, which of course are like the most populous countries as well. So they come in STEM, as you can see, some of the most popular disciplines, along with business and management. Okay, so once we know, we've decided, let's say that you have decided that you want to send your child there, or you yourself as a student wants to study in the US, how do you decide where to go? Because there are more than 4,000 colleges alone in the US, so it can be difficult to pinpoint which one. So a couple of like just general questions to get you thinking like what you might be the best fit for you is like, what do you prefer? Like, do you prefer being on a campus that is more urban within the city or more rural? So just to get you thinking, right? Do you prefer a campus that is more traditional or that is a bit more spread out? So traditional campus in the sense that is all like condensed. So it's like a town in its own. Whereas spread out means like, for example, NYU, it's a really good example because it's the city of New York City. And so you're just walking and then you have different buildings that belong to NYU. So it's very much integrated with the city of New York. So it's a very different experience. So that's why it might seem silly at the beginning, because it's this is some of the things that I find like most common with parents and students alike, that it's so easy to get blindsided by global rankings alone. And what's the number one university on the list, and I will send my child there, or I'll go there, that's where I want to go. Well, while there are many other considerations that again seem even petty and are very, very important once you're there. So something that I like telling, again, both students and parents is that college is more than just a place for studying. It's a place you're going to call your home. You're going to be there for 4 years, if not more. So it's very important to find a college that is a really good fit for you. So a college that might be a great fit for one of your best friends might not be one for you. That's something very like important to bear in mind. Even if it's like there are many like prestigious institutions, so don't think like not one like fits all of them. Even with the Ivy League schools, which are like of course some of the most popular choices, it's very different going to Columbia, let's say, as to going to Brown. Both Ivy League institutions, both very prestigious, yet the experience as a student could not be more different, because Columbia is known for its rigid core curriculum. So it's more similar to Europe in the sense that you don't really choose your courses for the first 2 years. They're given to you. It's like, congratulations, you made it. Here's your schedule, here are your courses, show up. Whereas in Brown is very much the epitome of the American experience, in the sense that they really encourage you to explore all kinds of courses that are not necessarily related to your intended major. So again, yes, you have a degree Brown, you have a degree Columbia, very like prestigious, both of them, yet the experience again couldn't be more different. So that's why it's so important to find a campus, to find a college where you're gonna feel happy. We're gonna like be excited to go to class, yes, but also do other activities, meet new people. You feel like you have found your place, you have found your home in a way. So again, some questions. Again, climate, something that also may seem quite silly, and it's extremely important. So some of the many students tell me when I first ask them, so what's your top choice? And they say Harvard University. But then I asked them, it's like, okay, how well do you tolerate the cold? Do you like cold weather? And someone's like, oh no, I can't tolerate it. Like I've been here in Dubai all my life. I'm used to the heat. So, okay, be ready, because Harvard University, or like Boston area, or to be more specific, Cambridge, where it's located, it can get really, really cold in the winter. So just for reference, one of the winters that I was there, we reached minus 30 degrees Celsius. So that was extremely, extremely cold. So, and they even call it's like this fun name that says it's an apocalypse, right? Because it snows a lot. So, whereas if you go to Cali, the climate is very, very different. And also the vibe, also the people, the political climate, all these things do play a role in like what type of experience you're going to have at college. So some things that you should bear in mind. Another very pertinent question. Hello? Hello?
Yes, speaking.
Okay, so another question.
Yeah, I'm attending that webinar. Yes, yes.
Okay, so another question is whether you want to be with a small or a large student population, if this is something that is important to you or not as much, right? So you have, well, sorry, not international, but student population in general. So the University of Texas is one of the largest universities in the whole US. So as you can see here, it's astounding the number of students, like over 40,000. Whereas you have other colleges that are much smaller. So it's like more like, it feels like a family in a way, such as Caltech, right? So also plays a role in how you will feel once you're there. So things to bear in mind. That means that if you go to a larger college, you will have more choice when it comes to classes, when it comes to like meeting people from all over, extracurriculars, clubs, you name it. But it can be a little bit overwhelming as well. So both have pros and cons. So this is something you should also consider. All right, so that being said, is like then another question that I get a lot is like, okay, so how do we get started? I kind of like found my ideal region, and like I've started sort of listing my universities as like which ones could be good fits for me. What should I do next? So something to bear in mind is that to go to the US, the sooner that you get started, the better. The whole reason for this is because they have what is called a holistic approach to admissions. That means that they take a look at different components. So they don't just, so sure, academics or grades are really important, but it's not the only factor that plays a role on whether you're in or you're out. So the courses that you have selected throughout your high school years, also very important, but also your extracurricular activities. What activities have you done outside the classroom that show that you have different interests, that you show commitment, that show discipline, that show many other characteristics that they look for. So they look for well-rounded individuals that are willing to make an impact and be a positive change in their communities. So that's why, for example, having sports, having done summer programs or other courses outside that are related to your intended major, or not necessarily, that you have started your own personal projects, that you have done community service, all these things do play a role. So that's why the sooner you start, so we put here from grade 10, but ideally, you would start even like in grade 9. So throughout all 4 years of high school, you're working towards making your application for the US as strong as possible, because it can be really competitive, right? It's one of the top destinations for international students. So that means that they have limited seats available and a lot of applicants. When I say a lot, I mean thousands of applicants, depending on the school, but it's very normal to get, for some schools, to get over 20,000 applications. And of course, they may have 5,000 seats available, sometimes less, again, depending on how big or small it is. So that's why it's so important to try to work on it as soon as you can. So for grade 10, what do we recommend? Because there are different things, again, that do play a role. For example, standardized testing is another one, right? So we recommend that you start in grade 10. So we recommend taking the actual SAT or ACT exam in grade 11, but you should start preparing as soon as possible. So by the time you do it, you get the desired score. So you can start doing mocks. Then you start creating a general plan as like, which courses are you going to take in the following years? What curriculum are you at? What is your extracurricular activities and so on, right? And also reading is really, really important, because you'll have to write the personal statement for the US application. So you have to showcase your English proficiency and that you're an excellent writer and storyteller. So that's why reading is kind of like the foundation for that. So other things, also starting attending college fairs, like really doing like research as to, again, which universities might be the best fits for you. Continue with your extracurriculars, trying to get the best grades possible, of course, any awards, any other like competitions that you want to be you might participate in. And then also summer programs, whether it's on campus or online, something that we also highly recommend. So something that we help with here at LEAP, and me particularly as like one of the senior counselors, is building the profile for the students. So as I was mentioning, because the approach is holistic, it's so important to make sure that the student stands out from the crowd. Because admission officers, as I was saying, they receive thousands of applications. How do you make sure that you don't make it not to the second round, but the final round? So again, that's why being memorable, being someone's like that really stands out, is so important. So starting as early as possible, because it's not really just a checklist, right? It's like, oh, extracurriculars, one sport, one community service, one academic enrichment, done, right? So all, like pretty much all the candidates have extracurricular activities. So something that makes sense, something that is coherent, something that tells a story. So that's what we help students with. So again, they're memorable. That's kind of the goal. We also help them with all these processes to why, like finding the best colleges for them, the best fit. So having that understanding of what it's like, right? Like the different states, different characteristics of each college. So we try to really know the student, so to make recommendations that make sense. Because again, our goal is not just to say, for me at least, like it's not, oh, Maria, I got into X university, which was my dream. What I really want is for students to call me 3 months in when they're already there and say, I love it here. I'm in awe. Like I love my classes. I made really good friends. I'm participating in all these activities. Like I just love it. That's what I want. So that's why it's so important to help students throughout this journey, so they don't feel alone, right? Because it can be quite overwhelming. And helping them with absolutely everything: the personal statement, the letters of recommendations, all the supplemental essays, to make sure, again, that the whole application is telling a compelling story. It's helping them stand out. Seeing also if they're eligible for scholarships or need financial guidance, and other documentation they may need, as well as preparing them for potential college interviews, which can be a really important component as well, depending on the university they're applying to. So we mentioned that as well. So what about grade 11, right? So again, I mentioned this, that by grade 11, you should be taking the SAT. And some people ask me, why should I take the SAT? Because as of now, many universities list it as optional. It's like, okay, optional, that means I don't have to take it, right? One less thing that is on my checklist. However, it's highly encourage students to take it. The reason for it is, like, you need to try to think from an admission officer's perspective. If they're getting thousands of applications, and then you find yourself in a conundrum, you find 2 candidates, let's say, that have very similar profiles, similar grades, similar extracurriculars, both really good. One has submitted a really high score for the SAT, one has not. Who do you think will make it into the next round? So it will be the one who has provided those scores. So that's why it can give you a boost to your application. So again, we always try to things like, what is the minimum that I need to do in order to be considered, but the opposite. What is the maximum that I can do in order to really stand out and maximize my chances of success? So this is very easy. So if you start preparing soon, it's an exam that is definitely doable, and students can do really well if they prepare for it. So we highly encourage them to do it. Continue, of course, with their extracurricular activities, and as I mentioned, we do provide them with recommendations, very specific, depending on the student. So something to bear in mind is, like, I have 2 students with the same goal in mind, let's say same major, even same college. The recommendations that I give to each one of them will be different, because again, each person is different, it's very individualized. So again, it's not a checklist. because it's want to say like, this is who I am, this is what makes me me, this is what, you know, you please like let me in, because I'm gonna make an impact, like I'm someone you should invest in. So that's what we help do as well. 11 and grade 11 we continue with that. They also, if the students if they're required to take the TOEFL or IELTS exam, the English proficiency exam, many universities do require it. Some waive it depending on whether the students have studied in English their high school, but some may not. They say, okay, great that you have followed the English curriculum, but we still require the IELTS. So that's something to bear in mind. So depending on the list for the student, he may have to take it. And they start writing the essays, right? Start writing, because by the end of grade 11 that summer, we should finalize the personal statement. And the personal statement is the most important college essay that they will have to write for US admissions. So we should be working on that definitely. And we know for a fact that in some cases, admissions officers have in fact overlooked certain things like grades and other components such as extracurriculars, because the personal statement has been stellar. So it's something that definitely is worth taking the time for and making sure that it's amazing. So start drafting, getting it done. And also, start that, like narrowing down the university list, depending on to how many universities they will be applying. Finalizing also summer plans. This is the last opportunity for good summer plans. So really, really important because they won't be able to do summer school on their senior year. So it's going to be a crucial summer for them. So making sure they go into the right program, continuing with their extracurriculars, making sure that the grades are on point and so on. And then getting acquainted with the Common App, which is the portal through which they will apply to most of the universities in the US. Or if they want to apply to the universities in California, the UC application, they have their own portal. And some other universities may have their own, such as in the case for Stanford or MIT, they don't have the common one, they have their own portal. So very important to start planning for that and make sure we have whatever we can do in advance. It's highly recommended as always. Planning is best. So what about senior year? So senior year, again, ideally, the personal statement will be done right before starting the year. And then, of course, it's the last year, very, very important that they stay on track with their academics, the courses they have selected. We should finalize the resume. We start preparing for the college interviews, and then we start applying. So depending on the university they want to apply, and depending on their profile and so on, we may recommend that they apply early the session. So there are different deadlines for the US. So early the session basically is in November, as well as the UC deadline. So early decision means that, as the word says, that you're applying early to universities. So early decision is legally binding. So that means that if you get an acceptance letter from that school, you have to go. So this is best for students that have a very clear goal in mind, like they know which university is their dream school, is the best fit for them. And they just want to, the best chances of getting in, and also knowing the response as soon as possible so they can plan accordingly. And also students that have a really strong profile. So this is something that we recommend early decision. Early action does not maximize your chance of success, but it's a good way to knowing the responses from the universities earlier, because it can be very nerve-wracking to just wait until you get your letters of acceptance. So it's something they can do, again, provided that we have been able to work with them for a certain period of time and everything is on point. If not, they will have to wait until the regular decision deadline, which is typically January 1st. And for the universities in California, the deadline, as it says here as well, it's November 30th. So very important to know in advance as well if they will be applying to those. Okay, so other things they will be working on is supplemental essay. So depending on the university of their choice, they will have to do additional essay. So the personal statement is the big one that it's sent to all the universities that on the common application portal. But let's say that you want to apply to Tufts University, and then it says like you have different prompts, I guess, essays that you need to write specifically for Tufts. So they need to be working on that. That's why, again, planning is so important, because there are many different components and it's easy to just miss on something, or it's like not having enough time for things that are really important. Filling out the application properly, there's a strategic way to do it. It can be seem very straightforward, but there are definitely some no-nos and some things that they should avoid and some things they should definitely be doing, because we know for a fact that these things can be really small, but can make or break an application. So very important to do it properly, making sure they have all the letters of recommendation and the resume. So that is a little bit of the overview of the application. I know it's a lot of information and can be a bit overwhelming. So now we'll have some time for questions if you have any. So let me stop sharing so I can see, because I could not read the comments while I was sharing my screen. So now if you have any questions, please do. You can just write them on the chat, or you can just ask me directly. Okay, so I have a question here. Can you suggest me universities which has good opportunities in power electronics area for master's degree? So this webinar is particularly for students that want to do their undergrad in the US. So maybe you can get in contact with me after and we can talk about masters, because it's a little bit different. The application process, everything, what they look for in terms of profile. So, but I would say, regardless of what you want to study, and again, going back to my previous point, it's very important you find a good fit. So not just look at global rankings, right? You can just, anyone can do this. You can just Google best universities for X, right? Discipline or field. But again, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a really good fit for you. So important that, again, it fits your profile, and also you match the profile of the university to also maximize your chances. Okay, so another question we have here, we're in the UAE, CBSE curriculum. We want for medical undergrad admission. Okay, this is a really relevant question. If you want to study medicine in the US, it's a different pathway. So for example, if you apply in Europe, you have your high school diploma, you apply to medical school directly, right? You get accepted, you start with medical school, okay? It's considered undergraduate school. In the US, this is not the case. In the US, medical school is considered graduate school. What does that mean? It means that you get your high school diploma, you apply for your undergrad in a related field, let's say biology or chemistry, something along those lines. You do your undergrad there for 4 years, and once you have your bachelor's degree, then you apply for med school. So it's a much lengthier and, of course, more expensive pathway. So something very important to bear in mind. Again, you don't apply directly. You also, before applying, you have, let's say you have your bachelor's degree in biology. You also have to take what is called the MCAT exam. So it's a national exam standardized test, very competitive. Depending on your score, also determines in which school you can apply to, etc. So it's, again, in a way, it's like applying to university all over again. You apply for your bachelor's, but then you also apply for med school. So something, again, to bear in mind. Another thing, your Indian national is like, what do you want to do? Right? And this is a question for like everyone, right? Because I get a lot of students that might be interested in a country because they want to stay there, like work and live there. And this may not be an option always, depending on your nationality. So I'm not a visa expert myself. I'm a counselor. But I know this like just from having friends and having been in the US myself, that the immigration process is not always straightforward. And there might be a lot of red tape depending on your passport. So I would highly recommend talking to an expert on immigration if this is the whole reason for you to be going there. Also because for certain professions like medical school, you may not be able to practice in other countries. So making sure like there are certain like partnerships. So what is like the pathway after that? If like, let's say you become a doctor in the US, then if you have to take an exam in order to, make sure like they take you're eligible to practice in other countries. So each country has its own regulations. So important to really do proper research before making this decision. It's the same with law. So depending on the country where you get your degree from, you may not be able to practice in certain countries. So something to bear in mind. Any other questions that you have? I'll just give you a minute in case someone is typing and no more questions? All right. So in that case, thank you so much for joining this session. If you have any more questions, or if you want an initial consultation that is free with us, with Leap Scholar, you can contact me. My email, it was on the screen prior, but I'll just say it again. It is very simple, maria@leapscholar.com. So I'll put it also in the chat. So be sure to contact me again, further inquiries, or because I know each case is different, how person that is interested in a master's or just different circumstances. So you can get in contact with us for more information. So thank you so much again, everyone, for joining the session, and I hope you found it useful. And okay, hold on, one more question here. It was in the Q&A. As a 12th grader who will graduate June 2023, am I late to apply to the US? Yes, you're late for the US, unfortunately. So other options, but again, some options are still open in Europe. So I highly recommend that you take a look at that. And another thing that I like telling my students is that you can get started, let's say, in Europe, do your undergrad there, and then you can always apply to the US for a master's. That's a really, really good option as well. So, all right, again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the Sunday.